What do a talking pizza, a taco, and a chicken bucket have to do with ethics and compliance training? Well, today we're going to find out in a conversation with David Mindell, the Chief Compliance Officer of Yum Brands. David, welcome.
Thanks, Susan. It's great to be here.
As you know, I think, we start off with 3 rapid-fire statements, and you can only say yes, no, or maybe. So are you ready?
Ready to go.
All right. First, it's nearly impossible to get 100% E&C training completions without mercilessly nagging employees to do it.
Definitely no. We regularly get 99 to 100% completion rates.
Wow. Number 2, producing your own ethics and compliance training every year involves many approvals, review committees, and bureaucracy.
Also, again, no. I mean, we do work with our subject matter experts as we're developing training, but once we had approval for the plan, we were good to go and continue to just move it forward.
That's great. 3, humor has to be handled carefully as it doesn't always translate or work for every topic.
Yes, you have to handle it carefully, but what I like to say is boring is always boring in every language.
I love that saying. Great. We're ready to do a deep dive and learn about how Yum Brands has been using its brand to leverage ethics and compliance training. So first, what's the actual impact of using the humorous characters that are drawn from your brand on your E&C program?
So I think it's had a number of different benefits to us. So first of all, it's made people find our training more enjoyable. I mean, this is still compliance training we're talking about, so I don't expect it to be the most exciting thing out there. But we wanted to make it something that people didn't dread every year. So we used characters that people could find entertaining, allowed us to be creative with the content and how we deliver it. And if we're creating better content that people are more enjoying, they're going to be more engaged with it. And that was what the ultimate goal is, because the more engaged you are with the training, the more you're going to get out of it.
And that impacts completion rates from what you said too, right?
Absolutely. So we always had we always had really good completion rates, and we regularly get to 99, 100% every year. Usually the decimal point percentage that don't complete are not because they didn't do it. They either left the company or were on leave or something. So we really are effectively getting 100% every year. What's made a difference is like we're doing even less chasing than we have to. So more people are getting it done in the requisite, the time period, and we're not having to chase after stragglers as much towards the end of the year.
It's great to be able to avoid that. And what kind of feedback are you getting from management and employees?
Yeah, so the feedback has been really positive. I joke that when we initially did training, there was always a lot of work that went into it, but the feedback we would get years ago before we changed our training to this new format was generally negative, to be honest. And it was,
Yeah.
it was usually people asking like, "Can I get out of doing this training? Do I really have to do this again? Do we really need so much time on this?" And what the big change after we did this is like we do get feedback, and it's all been really positive. So we're getting feedback now that it's much more about can't believe I'm enjoying compliance training. This is great. This is entertaining. Appreciate how funny these are, and I'm learning from it. So it's a much more positive reaction to it, which is not only nice for the team that puts it together every year, rather than just hearing complaints. But again, it feels like people are getting more out of it and they're more engaged with it.
And I hear you won an award.
We did. Yes, I like to call it. So we won Telly awards for this, which I'll be honest, I was not familiar with before we won it. But have since learned that, especially in the marketing world, those are a very well recognized industry award. So for a company like ours, where marketing is key, that's a badge of honor that we could hang out there with a lot of our employees who knew what those were. So I now get to call it the award-winning compliance training program at Yum Brands, which is very exciting.
Stepping back a sec, tell me about your training requirements. How many hours do you require? What topics do you cover? How do you organize it?
Sure. So we work off a 3-year cycle of training. So we have a curriculum that spans over 3 years. We'll go through the full set of courses, and we do adjust it, based on either things we're seeing out there or new topics. Like for example, we added an AI course, in the middle of the cycle because the AI sort of came out of nowhere for us, and we felt like we needed to as we introduced an AI policy, introduce people to sort of the rules of the road when it came to utilizing AI in their work. But generally, we work on, as I said, 3-year cycle, and we aim for about 2 hours of seat time per year. So when we do our annual compliance training, we give people a month to complete the training, and over that month, they will take an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, with hours being sort of the average amount of time it takes to get through the training courses. Generally speaking, there are a couple of outliers. There's some very specific state requirements that we don't count towards that are longer
Yes.
trainings, but like generally speaking, that's the global audience gets the 2 hours of training per year, and then so over the 3 years, that's 6 hours of training covering various code of conduct type compliance courses, that, hit topics that we wanna hit, everything from TD to gifts to conflicts of interest to, anti-corruption, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, with your completion rates, and the amount of training you're doing, that's very impressive. So for people who are curious about how you began this program and this process, can you describe how did it start? How did you get management approval? And what do you have to do every year? Is it a big lift?
Sure. So, going back to where we started, as I said, always a lot of work went into our annual training, but it didn't have an identity. It wasn't consistent. One training program to the next didn't have any resemblance to the other. There was no continuity of content or characters or anything else. And so one advantage I had was when I moved into this role and was starting to take over training, I was challenged with, can we make our training more effective? Can we do something with our compliance program that gives it an identity? So I already had sort of built in, a mandate from senior management, to change the way we were doing things. And then it was just about presenting ideas. So, I have a very small but mighty team, and we sat down and we just started brainstorming on different ways. What could we do to change this? And we got fairly quickly to the idea that we wanted to make our training more entertaining. We wanted to have a brand for our compliance department, so it wasn't just compliance anymore. We, had a brand for it. We called it the TASTE program. Again, food company, so that makes sense. But TASTE stands for trust, accountability, support, togetherness, and ethics. And there was a jingle that was developed. So anyway, long story short, we once we had the buy-in, or we had the idea, we went to our compliance oversight committee, which is made up of our CEO's direct reports, and said, "This is what we're thinking we're doing. This is how we're going to do it." And everybody bought into the idea. That we had sort of a little pilot version that we showed them to give an idea what the characters were going to look like and how this was going to work. And they bought into it. Again, it fits the image of our company. It fits our company culture. I think that's the key thing here. We weren't going, we were pushing the limits on stuff and we were thinking outside the box, but it wasn't totally foreign, as a concept, knowing, our company culture. So once we did that and we were all in, we've just continued with it, and it's been, gave positive feedback. Now every year, because we're developing new courses, my team and with the subject matter experts we have at the company put together the content, and then we do work with some external consultants and who do sort of the production of the videos along with the writing. So as funny as I'd like to think I am, we do have like professional writers that help us with the content to bring it to life.
Well, it also sounds like you have the freedom to not always get it right and to experiment, which I think is really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely, and there have been times we have gotten it not right, and that's okay. The one I always like to reference is, we tried to, we're obviously using cartoon characters built around food items, so inherently there's a little bit of a lack of seriousness to that. We did try to do a course on workplace safety, workplace violence, which is obviously a very sensitive topic, and I will say we had different iterations of that training over the years, none of which have ever landed well, but we thought let's try going the other way and using our cartoon characters, even if they're presenting it in a very serious, fashion, and that didn't land well either. So I still haven't cracked the code on it, but at least, we were trying something different.
Well, and it's great for you and your team that you have the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about employing humor because that's always an issue I find. When I was running AECOM's ethics and compliance program, we found that we really had to be careful if we used humor or humorous videos.
Yeah.
What's your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely a challenge to do it effectively. I think the first thing is, again, I work in a company that is lighthearted by nature, so I think it fits our company culture. I don't say that this format would work everywhere. I think again, have to know your company. But the key, as I said, was to get people to engage with it more. And how do you do that? By more keeping people entertained. And how is a good way to keep people entertained? And that's to make them laugh. while they're still learning. So that was sort of if you look at that from the perspective of that was the overarching goal and the overarching approach. This was relatively easy to do. Now, one of the big challenges is we're a global company. We have, I mean, we have restaurants literally in 125 countries, I think, at this point, and offices all over the world. And we even within Yum have, I think we're at 8 working languages. So we have to translate all this training into those 8 languages. And admittedly, humor doesn't always translate well. And term the phrase that we use in English may not make a lot of sense. They're just not always easy to do. So the way we've solved for that are, we use imagery. Imagery is always universal, and most of that, is generally, funny whether you look, whether you understand the words with it at all. And then we also went with subtitles rather than using voiceovers because we felt like with subtitles we could at least make sure that the content we wanted to get across was being delivered, even if the jokes may not hit. And so that's the way we've done it. And then, as I said, you know, yes, humor does not always translate, but as I said earlier, boring always translates. So even if you only get it right 50% of the time on the humor, you're still better than you were by just delivering a boring training to everybody.
And can you share one example, perhaps, of something that didn't quite land?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it didn't land well, but we had one training years ago that had to do with protecting confidential information, and I won't even try to bore you with what the link is. But there was a joke about man buns at the time, which was a sort of a hairstyle that had gotten popular a few years ago, and that really didn't. We couldn't figure out a translation until um, uh, into Thai, for example, one of our working languages of like man bun. So yeah, but the imagery was
I
still
can
there. People
only
still got
imagine.
it, but it just didn't necessarily translate well.
And it sounds like you probably get good feedback on it when you, travel, to meet with employees.
Yeah, I mean,
Is
it's
it fair to say it's popular?
absolutely. In fact, I've been surprised by how popular the characters have become, and they have a little bit of a cult following around the world now, and in our North American offices for that matter. I showed up to do a training in one of our European offices, an in-person training, which I also do in one of our European offices. And one of the employees that was sort of hosting and was doing the introduction surprised me by showing up dressed in costume as one of our characters. She came dressed as hamburger. She said she would have come as pizza, but couldn't find a pizza costume on short notice. But she was very excited to represent the hamburger as introducing me to host the training. So yeah, they definitely have a following. And we've talked about putting them on. I think the next evolution for us is going to be to put them onto some internal merchandise that we can give out to, so T-shirts or mugs or something.
Oh, that sounds like a great, reward perhaps for people who yeah, when they complete their training or whatever. Well, what an impressive program, and it sounds like it's been a tremendous success within the company, and it's a good example of staying true to your brand
Yes.
and knowing your employee base as well. So thanks very much for sharing that with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Susan. Thanks for having me.